Well, good morning. It is Dominic Steele, and thanks for joining us on Daily Bible Time this morning. It's Friday morning, 13 January. We're on this journey through Biblical Critical Theory, the new book out by Christopher Watkin. And yes, I've now got a hardback copy. And so David Robertson and John Sandyman and others who sent me photos indicating that you'd got your hardback copy in front of me, well, I'm no longer jealous and coveting. And it is so good to be able to highlight pages in the print copy as opposed to highlighting them on the iBook edition. Moses, Exodus and the Torah is the chapter we're up to. We did the first few pages of it a couple of days ago. The study questions at the end of the chapter: how can the name of God revealed to Moses, that God reveals to Moses, help us understand and navigate dilemmas in modern criminal justice? How does the Exodus story critique today's ideologies of freedom? Explain how the Exodus-inspired emancipation narrative is used by the political left and political right today, and both those who laud reason and those who denigrate it. And in what way is the Exodus narrative history from below? And identify and comment on 3 ways in which the plausibility structures of late modern society make belief in God odd and countercultural. Now, rather than just work through the logic, I thought I might address a couple of those topics. How can the name that God reveals to Moses help us understand and navigate dilemmas in modern criminal justice? Well, the first thing is that God reveals his name in chapter 3 as I am who I am, but then he reveals his name as being full of graciousness, justice and graciousness in Exodus 33. And the line is, we see a God who is neither left nor right. If you like, the issues of the right, well, the political right is focusing on justice, locking offenders up, and in the case of serious crimes, throwing away the key, whereas the left is usually seen as favouring compassion, considering the social and structural causes of crime. However, what we see here in Exodus is a God of, well, justice and compassion, his justice and faithfulness and his compassion and mercy. We see that tension finally resolved in the person of the Lord Jesus when we get to John chapter 1 verse 14. How does the Exodus story critique today's ideologies of freedom? Well, it's not freedom from, but freedom for. Let my people go so that they may worship me. And in fact, freedom from everything is, in the end, tyranny. It's just the biggest bully wins. So when God frees the Israelite slaves, he says, come worship me. And so to actually see that we are better off living under God than living, well, fighting amongst ourselves, fighting our own natures even, enslaving ourselves to the fickle masters of ambition, reputation, fame, power, or even to the very ideology of our own freedom. That we will live better with some sort of constraint, and the constraint that comes from above is such a much better constraint than the constraint that is imposed either by the individual or by the community. Explain how the Exodus-inspired emancipation narrative is used by the political left and right today, and those who laud reason and those who denigrate it. Well, we do see, and this is the section that Watkin lists Exodus and modern politics, we do see, the early American settlers using the emancipation freedom narrative, we are free from Great Britain. Now let's keep the Lord's commands and we will be blessed. But then on the left, the black slaves of America were drawn to the same story, that they needed to be liberated. And so you have both left and right using the emancipation narrative of the Exodus as a key theme. I'll give you a couple of lines from Watkin. Time and again, the modern West finds its identity in having been freed from former oppressions and in continuing to free itself from those that remain. Having overcome religious irrationality or having abolished slavery is not enough to satisfy this self-understanding, though. The West requires new discoveries of new oppressions from which to liberate itself in order to reaffirm its identity as emancipated and emancipating. And in modernity, emancipation grows to become the dominant cultural story, leading to a social outlook that interprets all situations in terms of the oppressor and the oppressed, and tends to interpret the struggles of the oppressed as an instrument of redemption. There are the left-right versions. We see the right wants to liberate us from heavy hand of big government. The left wants to emancipate us from the socially unjust prejudices, long-standing inequalities and oppressions. The combined effect is that freedom becomes America's most important idea. In what way is the Exodus narrative history from below? Well, Exodus is history from below. This is Richard Borkman. History from below was to be written not just about ordinary working people, but from their perspective, so that the ordinary working people are not the passive objects of the deeds and policies of the elite, but active subjects of their own history. Then we move to the next question. Identify and comment on 3 ways in which the plausibility structure of late modern society makes belief in God odd and countercultural. Well, interestingly, you come to the end of the chapter and he speaks on plausibility structures, and he says, in the time of the Torah, there were all sorts of things that made belief in God plausible. I can't understand myself apart from God. I cannot understand politics without God. Wherever I look, I see little pictures of religious doctrine. Nothing makes sense without God. Whereas today, in the secularized West, I can't understand myself in a universe with God. I am autonomous, finding my own meaning in life. I can't understand politics with God. Everyone has one vote only, and yet the picture of God in the Bible is of absolute monarch. And everywhere I go, there are little pictures of a universe without God, where I exert my autonomous choice to decide what is right for me. And so, unbelief is much more plausible, whereas belief was the only plausible way to go. Leslie Newbegin says, it's not that there's no socially accepted plausibility structure and thus we make our own choices. This is the ruling plausibility structure, and we make our choices within its parameters. Well, there you go. That's Moses, Exodus, and the Torah. And chapter 12, prophecy and power. That's going to be our task to understand on Monday morning. Looking forward to you joining us then for Daily Bible Time. Thanks for joining us. God bless.